and I am the project coordinator for the National Adaptation Forum. So today we're just going to go through kind of a brief run through of the call for proposal components, the review criteria, and then we will have plenty of time for folks to ask questions about submitting proposals or anything else that may have kind of come up. So I will get right into this. If any questions kind of come up throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat or come off of mute. But again, we will have lots of time at the end as well. So to start off, we'll go through the call for proposal components. And let me drop a link in the chat for you all, just so you kind of know where to find all this information. So this is where you will find the call for proposal components on the National Adaptation Forum website. And these are all kind of the required elements that you will be asked to kind of input as you are going through the call for proposal submission form. So I'm going to go through each one of these during this session to kind of just clarify what we're looking for. So the first thing that you'll be asked to kind of fill in is the session organizer. So every proposal, kind of regardless of the session type, is going to require a session organizer. And that session organizer is the point of contact for that proposal. So this is the person who we are going to go to if we have any questions, if we need to make any announcements, and this is kind of the person who will then kind of distribute that information to the rest of the group and the rest of the speakers. So for session types that are going to have multiple presenters or contributors, as they're called within the submission form, the session organizer is kind of the one who would be responsible for recruiting speakers or kind of coordinating all aspects of that session in itself. And they will ultimately be the one who is responsible for submitting final session details when we are pulling together our final program. So one kind of funky thing about this is that if you are submitting a poster, an individual oral presentation, or any other session format where there's just kind of one presenter, you are going to be both the session organizer and contributor one in the submission form. And so unfortunately, due to the nature of the form, you're going to have to fill out your personal information twice, but hopefully it won't be too difficult. You can just copy and paste all of those things between those fields. So this is what this is going to look like in the submission form once you get there. You can see this kind of section for your session organizer, and there are a few kind of required fields. So that's going to be things like your name, position, affiliation, anything with an asterisk there is required. And then there are a few optional fields. And of course, we would love for you all to fill this out, but it is not required. It kind of just helps us to know who is submitting proposals, how to kind of build out a more robust and diverse program. Okay, so the next section is our session summary. So this is kind of like the meat of the content that you will be submitting. So the first thing here is your session title. So this has a 15-word limit. And I think the most important piece of advice that I can give here is to just make it descriptive. So like actually tell us what is going to be covered or what are people going to take away from this. I think during the proposal phase, often you can get away with having not the greatest title because, all of our reviewers will still be looking at your session description. But if your proposal ends up being accepted, oftentimes your session can be overlooked when it's in the full program because people kind of go off of the titles of sessions. So you really want something that's going to draw people in, really explain what they're going to be getting out of the session itself. And then the second part of this is the session description. If you're familiar with academic conferences, this would be the same as like the abstract. So this is a 200-word limit. This should be written as, a paragraph to kind of align with how it will be formatted within the program booklet. And really kind of you should be talking about the objective and the goals of the session, what is going to be covered and kind of the main takeaways as well. And I would say just make sure that you're editing for spelling, grammar, and flow. We often get proposals where you can tell there's good content in there, but just because it doesn't read very well, it's really hard to parse out if it would be worth including. So it's worth it to kind of do that editing in there as well. Okay, so next is our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice considerations. So this is a 200-word limit, and this is a required field as well. So we expect that DEIJ considerations are going to be an element of every single kind of proposal that is submitted to the conference. And so I want to share in the first link that I shared, the NAF call for proposal components, there is a specific DEIJ consideration section of that I would recommend going through and reading, because that provides kind of an example of what we're looking for and how this can kind of show up in work. And then I would also recommend looking through the specific DEIJ review criterion, because that also kind of provide some examples of how might this show up in your work and what are the types of things that we're looking for within proposals. And both of those links are in the chat. Okay. So the next section that you all be asked to fill out is session formats. So all sessions, regardless kind of the format, are going to be an hour and a half in length. And so we have kind of 6 predefined session types, but you are also kind of encouraged to expand beyond those 6 predefined session types and explore, more creative formats. So I have another link that I will share with you all, and this is all linked through our website as well. But one of our committee members pulled together this document called Avoiding Death by PowerPoint. So if you are inclined to kind of move away from more of the traditional format and explore something that's a little more creative, we want to welcome you to do that. It's certainly not a requirement, but you are welcome to do that. And so what are these different session formats? I will go through each one. So the first one we have is a working group. So generally, a working group is going to be focused on kind of like a single topic or a single question that you want to explore with a group. And in general, working groups, what we see is that folks will kind of break into small groups, maybe work on an individual activity or discuss, a certain question, and then kind of reconvene for a full group discussion. Again, this is kind of just all of these are going to be the general format that you see. You are welcome to have some creativity and flexibility within these formats as well. And you'll see in the next section, there will be an opportunity to kind of describe that format as well. So a symposium generally is some sort of kind of panel discussion or a series of presentations, or just any other format that kind of includes multiple presenters or performers or something like that. So a poster presentation, so this could be, the very kind of classic poster that you would see at an academic conference, but this could also be something like natural materials, artwork, or another visual representation of adaptation. And all of our posters are going to be displayed kind of in a poster hall, and the poster session itself takes place at the same time as our networking reception. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of bring folks by your poster. There's some food and drink, so it also kind of helps with that networking component as well. And then we have a training. So I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just something that's going to be a little more hands-on to allow people to gain skills around, a specific topic or method, or something along those lines. We have the Tools Cafe. And so essentially, if anyone has participated previously, this is going to be set up a little bit differently this year. But basically what we're going to do is have each kind of tool presenter give a short lightning talk. So this will likely be, you know, a minute or two to kind of the entire group at the beginning of the session, just saying, this is what the tool is, this is kind of what it can do, and this is the intended audience, something like that. And then after those lightning talks, we'll have all the tools kind of set up in a room, and attendees can kind of circulate through the room and demo those tools for the remainder of that hour and a half. And then we have individual oral presentations. So an individual oral presentation is a 15-minute presentation in itself, and then we'll group together a number of those presentations to make an hour and a half session. So you can either submit an individual oral presentation on a topic of your choice. And basically in that case, you'll just go through and click the topic areas in our submission form that kind of align with your presentation. Or you can choose a special session topic area that you might want to submit to. And I will explain special sessions in a few slides and kind of what those are. And then finally, we have an other format here. So if none of these formats that I just described kind of fit your needs, you can always choose this other option. The one caveat here is just making sure that if you do choose this, you kind of clearly explain you know, how the session will be formatted when you get to the session format details section. Okay, so what are special sessions? So with the forum committees and then the American Society of Adaptation Professionals, their peer learning groups, we kind of came together and identified 11 topic areas that were kind of special interest, things that we think are important in the field of adaptation right now. So you can see these 11 listed here. This is kind of how they look up above in this photo on the submission form. I will not go into each one of these right now, just because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions at the end. But I will drop the link into the chat, and this is where all those descriptions are, so you can kind of look through all of these and see if any of them could be of interest. But essentially, if you want to participate in one of these special sessions, what you'll do is you'll submit an individual oral presentation proposal. So that proposal is just going to be, you know, a 15-minute presentation that aligns with one of those topic areas, and you will kind of, you know, describe that format of the presentation. So is it just, you know, a very traditional oral presentation? Is it storytelling or performance? You know, whatever it may be. If that session is accepted, it will be incorporated into a larger session based on that topic area. So an hour and a half session. And just one last note here, that you only need to choose a special session if you are submitting an individual oral presentation for that topic area. So when you go into the submission form here, I'll go back to the previous slide, you can just leave this blank if you do not want to participate in a special session. Okay, so the next section is our session format details. So this is a required field. It's a 100-word limit. And this is basically kind of moving away from the content of the session itself and really talking about how is the session itself going to be structured. So how are attendees going to be engaged, especially in kind of formats where you may have breakout groups, things like that. This is kind of where you describe those things. It is required for all session types, but I would say it's especially important to kind of describe these components for things that are a little more interactive or complex, like the working groups, symposia, or trainings, or if you are taking one of the session formats and kind of varying that significantly from the pre-provided definition. And then the last part of this is just, we have an optional question about room setup. If you know for sure, like I definitely, you know, want a classroom style of room setup, you can indicate that there, but again, that is optional. Okay, topic areas and regions. This is pretty straightforward. Topic areas, we have 31 potential topic areas. So hopefully it covers almost everything you could be thinking of. And we just want you to choose the 2 that best align with your work. And I know that this is often difficult, especially in adaptation. Most of our work is very cross-sectoral. It, will align with more than that, but having just kind of the 2 main ones kind of helps us to build out the program and also helps us to analyze where we may have gaps in the program. And then regions, you will just choose 1, and this is just the place where your work is being done. Okay, and then the last section here is the proposed contributors. So what exactly is a contributor? I know it's kind of a funky word to be using in the submission form. So this is just anyone who's going to participate in the session. And I will pause before I move on because I see Shelby's question, are there descriptions for each of the 31 topic areas? There are not. So when you go into it and see, you'll see it's kind of just like 2 or 3 word phrases. But if there's any question about, what a certain topic area might mean, feel free to reach out to me, or we can get into that during the Q&A at the end here. Okay, so proposed contributor, that's anyone who participates in the session. You'll see in the submission form, we kind of have some predefined roles, but you're certainly not limited to these. You'll see we kind of have an other section as well. So roles could include a co-organizer, so someone who helps to kind of plan and organize the session, a presenter, so that's someone who would have a speaking or performing role, a moderator, so this is really someone who has kind of like a higher level oversight type of role. They might introduce the speakers, kind of transition between speakers and lead that Q&A. And then we have facilitators. That would be someone who is going to be, very much leading group discussions or helping with breakout groups, things like that. And then note takers. And then I see a question from Melissa. Can you contribute to more than one session? So let me pull up the language that we have online to share with you all. So in the call for proposal components section, you'll see that attendees, we're going to limit participation to just kind of 1 session per participant. So that would be kind of any of these roles, a presenter, moderator, facilitator, all of those things. But the exception to that are going to be groups and folks who are kind of explicitly mentioned in our equity and climate justice goals. So I will share a link to our equity and climate justice page here. Okay, so for proposed contributors, this is what this is going to look like on the submission form itself. Again, we have a number of kind of required fields here. That's, again, things like name, position. We will ask that you kind of define this person's role within the session itself. So again, that would be like, are they a presenter, a facilitator? And then if they've presented at previous NAFs. And we do have an option there if you don't know. So hopefully all those bases will be covered. And then we do have some optional categories as well. And then you will see at the bottom where it says add contributor, this is kind of where you can add another presenter or another person who is participating in this session. So you can, if you have 10 people, you can just keep adding those there. Okay, so last thing before we get into our review criteria is our password and editing. So this is kind of the last thing you will be asked to enter in the submission form. So make sure you write this down along with the submission ID, which will be provided to you in your confirmation screen. So you will click submit and then it'll say, thank you for submitting a proposal. Here's your submission ID. Make sure you record both that password and submission ID. And that is so if you need to go back and edit your submission, you will need both that submission ID and password. And in order to edit your submission at any point in time, what you can do is go to that same screen where you initially submitted a proposal. Instead of clicking make submission, you will click edit submission, and then you'll be prompted to put in that information. Okay, I will get into review criteria, and then we will have time for questions. So I would definitely recommend reading through our review criteria before you submit a proposal, just so you kind of know what our committee members will be looking at. I shared this already, but I will drop it again into the chat for anyone who has since joined. And Katie, yes, I see your question about a submission confirmation email. So another kind of quirk with our system is that a submission confirmation will be sent to the person who is listed as the first contributor, but not the session organizer itself. So as a session organizer, I would recommend like either saving a printout of that screen or something like that, so you have that information on hand if you want to reference it afterwards. Okay, so review criteria. The first review criteria that we have is the proposal adaptation focused? This is pretty straightforward. Just in some way, the proposal needs to be related to climate change adaptation. And for each of these criteria, I've definitely kind of paraphrased a bit here just to give a really high level overview of what we're going to be looking for. So again, I would recommend kind of going through and reading through the details. So the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice criteria. So we're looking to make sure that all proposals have details on how DEIJ principles are integrated into those adaptation efforts. Clarity, we just want to make sure the proposal is easy to read and it's kind of clear what attendees are going to take away from the session. Potential or evidence of impact. So if this work has already been done, it's clear that it's had an impact. And if it hasn't been done, it's clear that it has kind of that potential for impact. And I wanted to clarify here, I think it's easy to kind of mix up potentially scale and impact. I want to clarify that this doesn't mean things need to be large scale in order to be impactful. Interactivity and accessibility. So it's very clear how audience members will be engaged. And then also that the folks writing the proposal have made an effort to make the presentation or the session accessible for kind of all attendee members. And then last, we have our kind of overall score. So when we are asking our committee members to review proposals, the overall score should be a reflection of the criteria above, but then the overall score also provides kind of an opportunity to highlight proposals that may not exactly align with the review criteria, but still would add significant value to the program itself. So that is why it's kind of a separate criteria from the rest of them themselves. Okay, so that is everything I have for you all. I have my contact here. My name is Carrie. Again, you can email me at info@nationaladaptationforum.org. And again, all of this information that I shared today is on the National Adaptation Forum website. And so I'm just going to go ahead and stop there and we can open it up for questions. So feel free to put anything in the chat or come off of mute.
Hi, this is Audrey with the Cool Roof Rating Council. I have a question. I know that a person can only be a contributor in one session. Can you submit multiple proposals? Like, could you be a contributor in a symposium, but also submit one to like participate in a special session?
Yes, definitely. So there's no limit on the number that you could submit, because certainly there's not a guarantee that all will be accepted. So if you feel like there are multiple things that you'd want to submit and just kind of see what is able to make it through, I would encourage you to do that.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Carrie, this is Lisa Churchill, Climate Advisory. Thanks for that overview. And just to follow up on Audrey's question, if you were so fortunate to have 2 submissions that were accepted, how does the review committee consider that they're really looking to make sure there's diversity of attendees and, 1 presentation per attendee unless you meet those other criteria?
So I think something like that would probably be assessed before the presentation itself was accepted. So when we're going through kind of the program building phase, we'll do a pretty thorough kind of analysis of, here are the proposals that have scored really highly. What is the makeup of this group? Do we have like a lot of repeat submissions here? What is the racial and ethnic kind of breakdown of these groups? And what is like the organizational breakdown of these groups? Do we have one organization that's really highlighted way more than anyone else? So hopefully we're kind of catching that from the front end before we actually send out any acceptances. So we're making sure we're kind of aligning with that rule that we've set from the beginning.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Hi there, this is Zoe Need from the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Thanks for that presentation and overview. I guess I'm wondering, is there any back and forth after we submit a proposal? Might the committee reach out to ask for clarification, or do we just get the acceptance or not email? Thanks.
So generally what will happen is that there won't be too much back and forth during the review period, but if you are accepted, there may be recommendations from the committee as to how like the description could be strengthened or clarified or things like that, or maybe recommendations for adding another speaker or things like that. So that is maybe what you could expect, but generally there's not a lot of back and forth during kind of that review period.
Thank you.
Hi, Carrie, Lisa Churchill again. Is there a place, did I miss the place with the 31 topic areas that are listed on the website, or is that something you only see once you get into the form?
Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, here, let me grab it for you. So if you go to the link that I just put in the chat and then scroll to the little drop down that says topic areas and expand that.
Okay,
And
great.
that
Thanks.
will list those out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so I see a question. Can 2 people present during individual oral presentations? Yes, that's definitely allowed. We've had that done in the past where they kind of split that time. So feel free, if you are considering that for a proposal, you will just have kind of, 2 contributors listed in that section. And then in the session format details, I would just recommend saying, this is an individual oral presentation. It will be split between these 2 speakers just to kind of clarify. What other questions are out there? I'm here for another half an hour, so I have nothing but time.
This is Audrey again. When will the decisions be made? Like, what's the timeline?
Yeah, so our proposals will be due end of September. And then our committees will be reviewing proposals kind of throughout the month of October. We will take the month of November to kind of develop out that initial set of, acceptances, kind of build out the program, and then kind of acceptances are done on a bit of a rolling basis. So kind of the first set of acceptances will probably be sent out beginning of December, if not mid-December. And I think the very latest that you would hear, I would expect would be like mid to late January.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, I joined late, so I probably missed this part, but could you say again, if you already covered this, about the special sessions? Are there like a certain number of presentations reserved for those? Should we be looking to, meet one of those 11 topics? Thanks.
Definitely. Yeah, so I will drop, just if anyone needs it, I will drop the link to our special sessions in the chat again. So kind of the way that the special sessions are being run this year is that the American Society of Adaptation Professionals is kind of like recruiting special session organizers, and that is a little bit separate from this call for proposals process. So these will be the folks who are kind of organizing the whole hour-and-a-half session. And then what they will do is each of those organizers will pull specific presentations that are submitted as part of this call for proposals. So those individual oral presentations. And so there will be, I would say, at least 2 of those oral presentations that are accepted per special session, but I think it could certainly be more than that. It's really kind of up to the special session organizer to decide, who they want to accept and include. But I think without a doubt, all 11 special sessions are going to be included in the program. And if you are doing work that aligns with one of those topic areas, I would certainly encourage you to submit a presentation, an individual oral presentation to one of those special sessions. I don't know if that answered your question, Catherine.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. What other questions are out there? It's okay if it's very specific to your own proposal. It could be helpful for other folks to hear.
Hi, Carrie, this is Lisa again. I'll jump in if no one else has a burning question at the moment. So just to kind of follow up on Catherine's question there, in terms of the special sessions, is there like a 50-50 split about like how much time has been allotted for those 11 special sessions, and then how much time sort of remains open for the other sessions? Can you talk a little bit more about what timing looks like there in terms of the slots available?
Yeah, let me do a quick, hold on. Let me do some quick math so I can answer this a little more accurately for you. So we are going to have 10 kind of session blocks throughout the conference. And in those session blocks, we are going to have probably 8 to 10 concurrent sessions. So that means like 8 to 10 breakout rooms that are all going at the same time. So the special sessions will, and so ultimately that means we're going to have, close to 100 sessions total. And the special sessions are only going to be 11 of those. So we still have plenty of room within the program to fill it with other content that we receive from the call for proposals. So the special sessions will certainly kind of be highlighted because they are kind of topics that we think are important, but we will have a lot of room to fill in with other content.
Great, thanks. That's super helpful.
I have a question about session format. So I've never been to the conference before. This will be my first time. And you mentioned like kind of more creative formats, and you mentioned like storytelling and performance. I'm just curious if you can give like an example for those of us who haven't been before, like what that might look like.
Yeah, so to be honest, I don't really know if we've had a lot of sessions that have really aligned with kind of more creative formats and kind of non-traditional academic formats. Like this is something that we're really trying to push for this upcoming year, or just let folks know that like that is a completely acceptable format to have at this conference. It doesn't have to be exactly set as, you know, like a panel presentation. One session I did go to last year at the forum was kind of an art and adaptation session. So it was this really cool mix of, you know, a very brief presentation in the beginning to kind of set up the topic, but then we had kind of two different sections where we were just like working individually, and one was kind of like writing poetry, and then the other was working on kind of like your own drawing and art project related to adaptation. So that was kind of a bit of a non-traditional format in that way. And so that's probably one that I've seen, but I think there's probably a lot that could be done.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Chris Ree. I'm an independent consultant. I am considering a proposal with a group to run an appreciative inquiry workshop. And one thing that tends to work better for these is a longer session, longer than 90 minutes. And we were wondering if there might be a possibility of submitting and suggesting back-to-back sessions. So that would be a total of 3 hours.
So I think it could be worth submitting. I don't want to make any promises, right? Because ultimately it's kind of up to our committee members and what they think. I think what you could do is submit a proposal, like a part 1 and a part 2, and very kind of clearly describe, you know, what would happen in the first part and then what would happen in the second part of that training. And then we could kind of decide, you know, with our committee members, if it's, you know, worth taking that time. I will say, I think we would have to look at to kind of see, especially with that kind of one session per person, if, you know, it aligns with that rule, if it does not. So I think it's hard for me to say for certain. I will say, Christopher, that we do have time on the day before the event, which would be May 13th, where we have kind of space allocated for partner events. And so that would be kind of a 4-hour chunk of time. And so if you do think you need kind of more time to run an event, that is something that we could explore, and we could always talk, you know, separate from this call about what that might look like, to do a workshop there.
Okay, thanks. That all makes sense. Yeah, start of the conversation.
Perfect, thanks. Any other questions? Putting them in the chat is totally fine if that's preferable. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get more clarification on a few of the topic areas. Could you explain and give a little more context to the adaptive behaviors in practice?
Yes, let me see. Shelby, I may have to follow up with you on that one because that is a topic area that was added by one of our committee members, and she had like a very nice explanation for it that I will not be able to describe as eloquently. So if you want to drop your email in the chat, or you can message it to me privately, I can follow up with you. And I can
That'd be great.
also add a little description to the website because I'm sure other folks are probably confused by that as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to ask you about another one. And again, if you want to email me about this one too, but I just thought maybe I'd ask on the call. For the policy solutions for adaptation, does that one, can it be policies at any level? And does it have to be government policies, or could it be policies within an organization?
So it could definitely be at any level. I think generally it's been in the past, it has been centered towards kind of like government focused policy. But I think it would also fit for organizational as well. I mean, clearly if the content of your kind of session description is clear, I think we'll be able to tell like, oh, I see where this alignment is. So I think it would be okay to also use that topic area for that type of work as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you, Shelby. I got your email. I will follow up with you. All right, I see folks starting to log off. I can stay on for a couple more minutes if anyone has other questions, but feel free to, go on to the next thing you have planned, and I will plan to stay here until 10:45 Pacific to see if there are any final questions from folks. Thanks everyone for joining.